Good morning, Read 180 students. I'm going to try recording this again. Sorry for the delay, but apparently the last recording I did, my microphone got turned off on my iPad and I didn't realize it. So sorry about that, but I'm going to re-record the lesson for today and get it posted as soon as I can get it uploaded to YouTube. So again, welcome to Read 180 today. We are working on lesson 8. Today's Thursday. This will be the last recording for the week because tomorrow your assignment is to complete a software. So we are going to continue with our story, The Lottery, written by Shirley Jackson, and we are kind of wrapping up the middle part of this short story. So today when we focus on the lesson, we're going to be really looking at making some inferences because there's a lot of things happening in the story that the author's not coming out and really coming straightforward to tell us. Sometimes the text clearly says what we need to know, but sometimes they don't really tell us exactly or very clearly. So we have to make our own inferences, and that's what our learning target is today. Being able to analyze what the text clearly says and make inferences about what the text does not clearly say. And again, today you'll be identifying important events in the text, and you'll be citing that text evidence when you complete your assignment. Your next slide is just a review from the previous day. Many of you did complete that second part, that middle part 2. For identifying the settings, characters, and plot. We're going to read a little bit more, so if you need to add to your answers and resubmit that page, I'm okay with that if you want to add, especially in the area of plot, if there's any sequence of events that haven't been included. So again, if you've already submitted it, that's fine, and if you want to add to your answers and resubmit, I will grade that one as well. Now, the first thing we're going to do is look at the academic vocabulary for these 2 pages. And if you look on page 142, the 2 words we're going to look at are the words quit and gravely. And again, like we did in the previous lessons, I'm going to read the definition, give you the definition, and you're going to complete the example for each of those words. So our first word is quit. And quit is a verb, it's an action word, and you'll see it in paragraph 34. And to quit means to stop doing something. So an example I might give to you is people who want to get more exercise might quit taking the bus to school and ride a bike instead. Now, your example, that what they want you to do is answer this question. What's a polite way to ask someone to quit talking during a movie? So I'd like you to fill out that sentence starter and complete that sentence for quit. The second word is gravely. Now, gravely is an adverb, and remember, an adverb is a word that describes a verb or an action word. So it's really going to say how somebody's doing something. So in this case, if you look at gravely, it means to behave or act in a somber or dignified way. Now, somber is another word for like being very serious. So again, that tone is going to be very dignified, very somber. And we're going to ask you to complete the example by answering this question. When might you speak to someone gravely about something? So I might speak to someone gravely if I have, what kind of news would you use a somber tone with or communicate gravely to somebody? Now, my example, I forgot to mention, I might speak gravely about an earthquake or a car accident because they are serious events. All right, so what I want you to do, you can pause this recording, finish page 142, and then what we're going to do quickly before we reread these 2 pages, I want you to look at the top of page 143 where it says close reading. And we're going to look at the key idea question because you'll be responsible for finding evidence to answer this question. And the question is, what does Old Man Warner think about talk in the North Village of giving up the lottery? And again, you're going to draw an inference here based on some evidence from maybe what the character said or how he acted. So keeping that key idea in mind, let's go back to page 142 and follow along as I read pages 142 and 143 aloud. Seems like there's no time at all between lotteries anymore, Mrs. Delacroix said to Mrs. Graves in the back row. Seems like we got through with the last one only last week. Time sure goes fast, Mrs. Graves said. Clark, Delacroix. There goes my old man, Mrs. Delacroix said. She held her breath while her husband went forward. Dunbar, Mr. Summers said, and Mrs. Dunbar went steadily to the box while one of the women said, Go on, Janie, and another said, There she goes. We're next, Mrs. Graves said. She watched while Mr. Graves came around from the other side of the box, greeted Mr. Summers gravely or somberly, and selected a slip of paper from the box. By now, all through the crowd, there were men holding the small folded papers in their large hands, turning them over and over nervously. Mrs. Dunbar and her two sons stood together, Mrs. Dunbar holding the slip of paper. Harbert, Hutchinson. Get up there, Bill, Mrs. Hutchinson said, and the people near her laughed. Jones. They do say, Mr. Adams said to old man Warner, who stood next to him, that over in the North Village they're talking of giving up the lottery. Okay, top of page 143. Old man Warner snorted. Pack of crazy fools, he said. Listening to the young folks, nothing's good enough for them. Next thing you know, they'll be wanting to go back to living in caves. Nobody work anymore. Live that way for a while. Used to be a saying about lottery in June, corn be heavy soon. First thing you know, we'd all be eating stewed chickweed and acorns. There's always been a lottery, he added petulantly. And petulant means kind of like to behave in kind of an ill-tempered way. Bad enough to see young Joe Summers up there joking with everybody. Some places have already quit lotteries, Mrs. Adams said. Nothing but trouble in that, old man Warner said stoutly. Pack of young fools. Remember, a pack is like a group of people. Martin, and Bobby Martin watched his father go forward. Overdyke. Percy. I wish they'd hurry, Mrs. Dunbar said to her older son. I wish they'd hurry. They're almost through, her son said. You get ready to run tell Dad, Mrs. Dunbar said. Okay, so we're going to stop reading at this point. And again, what I want you to do is be thinking about that key idea. You'll be writing your response up in that top section on page 143. Now, again, like I said, the focus of today's lesson is making an inference. And if you look on the left-hand side of the slide, making inferences help us to figure out an author's deeper meaning in anything that we read. We have to ask ourselves what that message the author is trying to tell us, even if she or he doesn't directly state it. So again, we have to kind of look at some clues as we read. And the clues will be like, what are the characters saying? How are they acting? How are they interacting with each other? So again, we might have to look for some of those clues as we read when we answer these next two questions. Okay? And again, you can be just kind of thinking about, do you think that Mr. and Mrs. Adams might want their village to quit the lottery? And what was the evidence, or what led you to think this way? Okay. Now, I'm going to have you go ahead and finish the two sections, the making inferences. And this question says, what does Mr. and Mrs. Adams' exchange with old man Warner tell you about the tradition of the lottery? Now, an exchange just means a conversation. And so when Mr. and Mrs. Adams had that conversation with old man Warner, what inference did you make about, do they want to quit the lottery? Are they kind of leaning towards maybe they agree, or they don't agree with it? What is your thought on that? Did Mrs. Adams or Mr. Adams say something that we might predict what their thought would be on it? And then you're going to do the react and write. And that react and write, again, you're going to have to look for evidence by going back in and reading for this specifically. But do you think the tradition of the lottery is likely to change in the village? Again, this is where you're going to draw your own inference. What do you think? And again, you're going to base your answer on what kind of evidence do you think? All right. Now, the last thing I just kind of want to mention too is I didn't talk about the strategy toolkit, but again, when you look at making inferences, sometimes, again, it's going to help us understand more how are those characters acting and feeling. You know, the author doesn't come out and say Mr. or Mrs. so-and-so acts or feels this way because based on how they're talking and how they're acting, we have to figure that out. So again, making inferences is sometimes a little harder. These are the kind of questions that you're asked, like, what do you think? And then we want you to base your answer on kind of what conclusions have you been drawing or those deeper thinking questions that we have to ask you. All right, so that's it for today. You're going to submit pages 142 and 143 in Google Classroom when they are completed. Now, just a reminder, tomorrow is an assigned date to do some workshop, 20 minutes on your workshop. And again, that should total 100 minutes at the end of these weeks here. So when I put that grade in the grade book, it's going to be worth 25 points. And if you are close, you'll get the points. What I'll do is I will do a percentage of minutes based or percentage of points based on the minutes that you have logged in software that I will go through and look in the report when I print it out. All right. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to give me an email. You can give me a call. I'm at work today or at school today, so I will even probably be at my desk. I miss you guys. I'm hoping that we are going to be in school soon. If not, keep up the good work. I think most of you are really rocking this distance learning, and I know some of you are kind of getting in the groove, so I'm very proud of you. See you tomorrow.